The KeyStation 61, 10 years later. Well, 9 years later. Still, that's kind of a long time for a controller, and I've had it that long, and it still works. The most common question I've gotten about it in these past 9 years has been, does it have sounds? What sounds does it have? It does not have sounds. It is a controller, very much like a QWERTY keyboard on a computer. Well, let's look at the design of it real quick. All right, so here we have on the far left end of the KeyStation, the branding, KeyStation, and then we have these three buttons. We have our advanced, this we'll talk about later, our octaves up and down, we have our volume fader, and then we have our pitch bend and modulation wheels. Over towards the middle of the device, we have our transport controls, stop, play, and record. And let's let them focus. And then we have our navigation arrows right there, up, down, left, right, center. That's probably enter. And you can set all those up to work with your DAW. I have a video explaining that. So back over here, these octave up and down keys are, of course, because it is 61 keys. And most pianos are, well, acoustic pianos are 88 keys. So if I hit the octave over here, and of course, as you know, as piano players know, the piano does not end on C, it ends on A, but to get to that A, we go here. As you can see, the light turns orange, telling you that you cannot possibly go any lower. And there's the low A. So this note, which was down here, is now up here. It can get a little confusing if you're trying to play a piece that requires more than 5 octaves, which is what 61 keys are, but you can get used to it. The advanced button, as we mentioned before, allows us to access other functions. For example, if I want the octave buttons to do transpose instead, I can go over here, hit transpose, and now we hit the up, and it'll go. So it's actually moved it to this key. And it goes in half steps. So that's one thing you can do with it. We'll go ahead and center it. And they function the same way. We'll hit advanced again, and we'll hit octave. As you can see, they're all labeled across the top of the keyboard. Now, you can also use it to change MIDI channels, which I have done with this one. I actually, funny story, did it accidentally. And all of a sudden, all my software instruments did not work because I'd set it to a different MIDI channel than the one they were using, and no sound because it was sending the signal to the wrong place. On the back of the unit, we have the very large M Audio logo, and then on the far right, as I almost drop it, is our power input, our USB input, which is plugged into. That's how it's connected to the computer. We have a MIDI out, which will allow you to control MIDI hardware, such as sound modules. And then we have our sustain, which is also already plugged in, and our on and off power switch. Now, the keys on the KeyStation are semi-weighted, which means they do not have the full weight of either a graded hammer action or acoustic piano keys. So and you can probably even hear a little bit of clickiness with the keys. If I were to go ahead and mute the piano sound it's controlling. Should give you an idea how loud the keys can be. And of course, if you, I'm known for laying into the keys quite a bit, so it can handle it. News is that in your recordings you will not be hearing any of the keys unless you're recording vocals with a microphone, because MIDI is an internal recording process. Now, as I've said, it doesn't contain any sounds. It's simply a controller, and we can use it to control instruments like Alicia's keys. One of the nice things they do is they give you a complete starter pack of instruments, which we can look at here. We got air music, Mini Grand Velvet Expand 2. When I got mine is the Mark II. Currently they have the Mark III, and which will run you $199. And it comes with these instruments, Mini Grand Velvet Expand 2, Ableton Live Lite, Scuve, Touch Loops, and Melodics Tutorial. So 61 keys, semi-weighted as I've said. Pitch bend and mod wheel. Dedicated transport control, yes. And 1/4-inch sustain, we looked at that. MIDI out, it only has MIDI out, doesn't have MIDI in, because no sounds, no need to send MIDI to it. It is USB powered, although you can power it with a power adapter, 9-volt power adapter, which is sold separately. I didn't get one, I didn't need it. All right, it's about 9 pounds, and this is the Mark III. Now the Mark III has a bit of a different design, and it looks a little bit smoother, to be honest. And so we'll take a look at that design real quick. Okay, right there you can see that the modulation and pitch wheels have a more round look, whereas the Mark II, which I have, it's a little more squarish, has an indent for the fingers, but it's not exactly, it doesn't look like a finger, it's more like a slot your finger can fit into. The fader is flat, and all the buttons, they kind of blend in. Everything is over here. It doesn't have the transport controls in the middle like the Mark II. They're all on this side. So that leaves a lot of room to set, I don't know, your phone or papers, or I wouldn't recommend setting papers on it. They will fall off the thing. So yeah, the 61, there was the 49. The 49 you just saw has the waterfall keys. I think they're called waterfall, or synth keys. And there's a 32. And then, but they're pretty much the same in layout. So they used to have an 88 key version, which they no longer have. Right there you can see, pretty clean all the way across the top. Here are the buttons, little marker. It's easier to see those lines on the Mark III than it is on the Mark II. And so full size, they are full size, same as another keyboard. Here's the back panel. You can see it's almost exactly the same. They've added a Kensington lock, and yeah, still the 9-volt power, USB, MIDI out, and the power button, sustain pedal. All right, transport and directional buttons. Those look the same design. Very basic, very practical. So I have the Mark II. I can say it's solid. It may not be the world's greatest controller. It doesn't have any pads or faders. But if you're just getting started, you want something basic and functional that will last you possibly 10 years, go ahead and go with the KeyStation. If you want to see the KeyStation in action, check out my latest improv session video, or check out my review of Alicia's electric keys. Stay curious.